This is my daughter.
78-year-old Faye Combs is proud of her life. She's a wife, a mother. But for decades, she's lived with a secret she kept from the one she loved.
I was married 7 years before he even knew I couldn't even read or write.
Reading is a skill Faye feels people take for granted.
You don't hear it. It's not a dinner table discussion.
A skill she says she lost as a little girl.
I had a trauma in my life when a very early age, like 7. And in my trauma, which I was raped, I erased all of that. And in erasing all of that, I erased all the skills that I had learned from kindergarten up to that point.
It wasn't until Faye was 40 years old that she finally opened up and got a tutor.
I talked to this lady. I didn't know this lady, had never met her, but I just poured out my story because I was desperate. I really wanted to be better and do better.
Faye says one of the many problems she faced as she struggled with reading was voting. She says it was hard finding the strength to not only say, I can't read, but to also reach out for help and understand what's on the ballot.
I always had the fear when I was in the booth was that I would be in there for a long time and people were coming and going and coming and going, and I'm still there. That was intimidating to me.
Faye isn't alone. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, 1 in 5 Americans struggles to read English at a basic level. The question is, how does that impact participation in elections? Our partners at Pro Publica analyzed voter participation and literacy data for more than 3,000 counties across the U.S. and found areas with lower estimated literacy rates tend to also have lower voter turnouts. In fact, according to their analysis, if low literacy counties had similar turnout rates to high literacy counties in 2016, 18, and 2020, they could have added up to about 7 million votes nationally each year. And while there are many factors that play into whether a person votes, including transportation and the ability to get time off work, Pro Publica found that increased participation in low literacy counties could have the power to swing close races.
The ultimate test is, what are we, what is society doing to make it better, to fix it?
Across the country from Faye Combs, about 3.5 hours south of Atlanta, is Coffee County, Georgia, Olivia Coley Pearson's home. She's not only a city commissioner, but a voting rights advocate. Her fight to help people at the polls has come under fire. Pearson was criminally charged in 2 separate incidents, accused of illegally helping people vote in both the 2012 and 2020 elections. In the first incident, she was tried and acquitted. In the second, the charges were dropped after she agreed to follow all election laws.
What are you hearing from people when they say they're nervous about voting or they are apprehensive about going to vote and they can't read or write?
They feel like society shuns or look down on people who can't adequately read and write. That's why I'm there whenever I can be to encourage them that, this is your right to vote.
Throughout our nation's history, literacy and the right to vote have been used as tools for discrimination. During the Jim Crow era, states and counties across the South created restrictions like literacy tests to make it difficult for African Americans to vote. The fight for equal rights at the polling place led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which prohibited racial discrimination in voting. Federal law allows voting assistance for people who are blind, disabled, and who are unable to read. But Coley Pearson says roadblocks at the polls still linger.
And it seems to me like a lot of the people are trying to keep the illiterate people from being able to vote by making laws more stricter.
In a 2001 case, the federal Justice Department claimed white poll managers in Charleston County, South Carolina, were intimidating Black voters who requested assistance. A federal judge ultimately found there was significant evidence of intimidation and harassment, but said the mistreatment was too anecdotal to take direct action. And in 2021, Florida expanded the area around election locations, prohibiting volunteers from asking people if they need help.
Give it up for Coffee County!
It's issues like these, Olivia Coley Pearson says, she's battled time and time again.
Do you feel like it's a form of voter suppression?
I know it's a form of voter suppression. I don't feel like it. I know it is.
Advocates say in order for the voting experience to improve for voters who struggle to read, ballots need to be more accessible.
Maybe you don't have to say amend the Constitution. You could say change the Constitution or change a law. Being conscious of writing so that people who don't read well can understand it, so people who don't learn best by reading can understand it.
Whitney Quisenberry and her colleagues at the Center for Civic Design have assisted numerous states, working with local election officials to create materials to help Americans with reading challenges understand the voting process. She says when state and local voting changes are made, it's important for agencies and election officials to spread the word, going to areas which may not have the resources to get the information.
It's easy for an election official to reach your local Center for Independent Living. But what about people who aren't going to that center, right? How do you reach the people who aren't visible in the community?
Ashamed no more, Faye speaks out, traveling the nation, speaking with lawmakers about why it's important to reach out and listen to those who struggle with reading and writing.
Everybody doesn't have a computer. Oh, go to the website. Everybody doesn't have a computer. Oh, you can do it. It's easy. No, it is not easy. If you don't know how to, it's intimidating to those of us that do not.
She also shares her story with those battling the same fight she eventually won, letting them know no matter what their reading comprehension is, they too have the right to read and to vote. For Investigate TV, I'm Caresse Jackman.